Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with the story about how a man's genuine skill and likability triumphed over a short-sighted decision of his boss. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Not enough technical skills? Okay. A little background. My father never properly learned to read and write. He came from a dysfunctional home, but that's another story. He was, however, very good at fixing cars. He worked at a junkyard since before I was born. I'll call this Junkyard A. A lot of times he would offer advice or even fix the cars of the customers on his own time as a side hustle. Another thing about my dad is he knew everybody. Anywhere we went, people would always stop him and speak to him, mostly asking about a problem they're having with their cars. It didn't matter where we went, even on vacation across the country, he ran into people he knew. The junkyard he worked at was originally owned by two brothers. They were good bosses, and he made a decent wage and had very good health insurance. They made good business there, and my father was the senior sales specialist. Business was so good, they bought a new location and built a new building and moved there. A few years later, the business was sold to a guy named Dave. Dave was all right. Although we lost the health insurance, he stayed there for, I'd say, 8 or 9 more years. One day, out of the blue, Dave fires my dad and said it was because he didn't have enough technical skills. He couldn't hardly read or write, but he could use the computer one-handed to search the system for parts while on the phone with a customer. He and 2 or 3 other guys would be in the front to help customers, and my dad's line would have 2 or 3 people waiting, especially for him, and would refuse to be waited on by someone else. So he came home and filed for unemployment. He stayed home for maybe 3 weeks and was offered a job at another junkyard that was located between the city we lived and the next city over. Since my father was so well-liked and everyone knew he got a raw deal from Junkyard A, they also switched businesses. All his longtime customers and friends now frequented Junkyard B. Many used car dealerships had deals with my father for the junk cars they sold for parts or parts they needed for fixing their used cars. All these businesses also switched junkyards and followed my dad to Junkyard B. This was a devastating hit to Junkyard A's business. So bad, in fact, they ended up selling the business to the owners of Junkyard B. As soon as the sale was finished, my dad was sent back to the Junkyard A, where he worked for the rest of his life. He actually died in the junkyard, massive heart attack. The funeral was so full of people, there wasn't enough room for everyone in the funeral home. His funeral procession, the line of cars that drive uninterrupted from the funeral home to the cemetery, was over an hour long due to so many cars. My mom went to buy the plot next to his a few days after the funeral, and the lady working there said she'd been working there for over 40 years, and it was one of the largest groups gathered for a funeral she'd ever seen. He may not have been able to read or write very well, but he knew cars, and he knew people. A lot of people. What a beautiful story. It amazes me how one person can touch so many lives. Your dad sounds amazing. He never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could fix an old car like he was ringing a bell. And our second story. Got fired from a place I was never employed at. So I work at a place where the uniform is a stunningly fashionable red polo with black trim. This occurred at a store where they wear the slimming black with lime green trim. I'm on my way home from work one winter day and decide to stop by the grocery store. As it's winter, I'm wearing my winter jacket, which is a very vibrant purple, and because it's kind of warm out, it's unzipped to reveal my work shirt. I also have my headphones in, a headband on, and a bright blue shoulder bag, aka clearly a customer. So I'm kneeling down in front of some drinks, pondering which I want to buy, when this woman starts getting up in my business. I shuffle over, thinking maybe she wants to look at the drinks as well, and start putting a couple in my basket. Then I hear the dreaded, "Excuse me." I glance around, hoping she's going at someone else, but to no avail. I look up, pulling out one earbud, and say, "Sorry, am I in your way?" Because my parents raised me to be polite. "Where's the coconut oil?" I just blink and shrug. "I don't know. Sorry." "Over there, maybe?" And I point over toward the baking aisle. "What do you mean you don't know? Are you that incompetent at your job?" Well, now I'm pissed. I clearly don't work there, and for the record, I'm very competent at my job. My job, not at this grocery store. Lady, I don't work here. Go find someone else. You're wearing a uniform. You have to help me. For a store down the street, not here. I don't have to help you with anything. Now leave me alone. And I start to walk off, but she screams at me as I'm leaving, I'm going to report you to your manager. To which my mature butt tells her to go for it. Now I finish up my shopping and I'm using the self-checkouts because between work and this Karen, I've had more social interaction than my introverted butt can handle when I hear, there she is, that's her. I look around to see who's screaming and lo and behold, there's Karen and she's dragging this poor sap with her over to me. She wouldn't help me. I want her fired. Ma'am, she doesn't work here. I don't care. I want her fired anyway. She's useless and rude. Ma'am, she doesn't work here. She works somewhere else. I literally don't have the authority to fire her. Are you telling me you're not going to fire her, even though she was rude? At this point, me and my buddy make eye contact, and a moment of understanding passes as it does between fellow retail staff, and I give him a small nod, and he signs. Very well, miss. I'm afraid it's just not working out. I'm going to have to let you go. I just nod solemnly. I understand. I'll be going now then. And I gather up my groceries and go to leave. And Karen just has the biggest crap-eating grin on her face. And that's the story of how I got fired from a store I never worked at a single day in my life. I like the story. But if things go like they have in the past when a manager fires an OP, you're going to get a few people complaining that doing that makes Karen more likely to Karen even more in the future. They'll probably say it better, but you get the drift. And our next story. My neighbor is landscaping my property. I live in a townhouse next to the world's worst neighbor. She used to clean up my leaves and be all neighborly, so the first year I lived there, I got her chocolates as a holiday gift/nice neighbor thing. Crap went down shortly after that. My pipes froze the next winter, and I asked if I could take a shower there. I figured I'd known her well enough to ask. She said no. Then she refused to let workers install a gutter on my property. This was after I'd already gone to the HOA letting them know of drainage issues. She put up a huge fuss while the workers were there, and it ended up in a mess. And my workers cussing her out? I could hear this on the phone while I was at work. She got the HOA involved. Luckily, I won and got my gutter. Next, I was looking into putting up a small dog fence in my back area. She told me she didn't want some fence degrading her property's value. I ended up not going through with the fence anyway. But geez. She once woke up my kid, at the time a baby, with her leaf blower on my property, and I went out there carrying my child, telling her to stop. She said, "Don't you care about the dead leaves killing the grass?" I said, "No, I care about my baby waking up." Last week, I had a new HVAC put in, and she spoke to my workers multiple times about not scratching her sidewalk. She's constantly on my property, spraying the grass. We pay $130 a month for our HOA fees, and they have landscapers out here constantly. I let it go until this Saturday when I see her squatting on my property, picking up weeds or something. She's out there for a good few minutes when I finally go out there and ask her to leave. She said no. She starts muttering about the mulch everywhere. I called the non-emergency police, and they send someone out. He tells me that no, she's not allowed to be there, other than to use the easement to walk by, and that I should contact the HOA. I contacted the HOA, and they tell me there's nothing they can do and stated that no HOA rules are being broken by your neighbor. Again, if not for all this BS, I'd just let her be. But she's too terrible for me to just allow her on my property. This is a police matter, not HOA. In most, if not all states, it's only trespassing if the person's been prohibited from going on the property. So unless you have a no trespassing sign, you need to tell her that she is not allowed to go on your property. And our last story. Neighbor destroyed a huge portion of my land. My wife and I bought 18.5 acres of heavily wooded, semi-old growth forest in north central Florida about a year ago. I'm a beekeeper, and I bought the property for future honey production. The land was perfect, with 50-plus-year-old basswoods dominating the southwestern portion. I couldn't wait to harvest honey right from my front doorstep, a real beekeeper's dream. Fast forward a few months, and I went out to the property, about an hour away, to check things out. To my horror, my beautiful basswood-dominated southwestern portion has been destroyed. A strip approximately 30 feet by 300 feet had been completely cleared, with all the debris pushed into a massive dirt and wood pile that couldn't be burned. I contacted my neighbor demanding that she stop immediately. She was clearly on my property, not hers. She began weaving a web of lies, offering to buy me replacement trees, give me cash outright, and promising to stop clearing. But then my first child was born, and I got absorbed in that world for several months. When I finally returned to the property, things were even worse. Not only had she not stopped, but she had laid and compacted lime rock, installed a utility line on my property without any easements, and placed a 53-foot metal container halfway on my land. We were forced to purchase a second survey within a year to have everything clearly marked out. This set us back financially. We had budgeted almost exactly for the survey, septic, well, utility line, and permits. The additional survey costs meant we couldn't afford everything, and we were forced to rent while still paying the mortgage. Instead of moving to our property with an RV and just paying the mortgage, we were stuck in this limbo. The bottom line is that she destroyed my property and my livelihood. Approximately 45 trees, each over 12 inches in diameter, were cut and dumped on my land, mostly under a 200-plus-year-old live oak. I can't burn the debris without moving it first. The septic company that cleared it claims they did the work independently of their septic services and are not responsible. The homeowner says it's the land clearing company's fault, and they also deny liability. To complicate matters further, the owner is 90 years old, and her daughter orchestrated everything. I've lost a significant amount of potential honey income over the next 30-plus years. It's hard to stomach. I don't understand how so many contractors and engineers could do this without consulting any surveys. That's why I hired an attorney. This case is closely related to tree law. My neighbor destroyed my property, and I have documented everything. My lawyer says it's an easy win, including trespassing, and given the high value of the land and the trees, we're hopeful for a significant settlement. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.